Hey, thank you for joining us today on the Grow Like a Mother podcast. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the show. If it is your 200th time listening, thank you for coming back week after week. I have an amazing guest again today, Kelly Mahler. She's an award-winning occupational therapist, an author, and an interoception groupie known for her boundless curiosity and fondness for crunching pine cones. Kelly holds a doctorate in occupational therapy, and she has served school-aged children and adults for over 22 years. Kelly's the author of 12 resources, including the Interoception curriculum, now used in over 30 countries worldwide. She enjoys speaking internationally on interoception, neuroaffirming practices, and playful strategies for inner exploration using a lens of curiosity, validation, and empathy. What does this mean? If you have a child who is neurodivergent, then you're kind of in this world. You hear sensory, you hear neuroaffirming, you're like, oh yeah, those words are familiar to me, but interoception, never heard of that. I've heard of proprioception, but interoception, huh? This was a new one for me. I recently had a conversation with some community support services to help my little Logan. And they mentioned Kelly and interoception. And I dug into her. And it turns out that my occupational therapy friends already know who she is. She's kind of a big deal. I reached out and I said, Kelly, would you come on the show and talk to us about this? Because it's so interesting and it's not talked about enough. So we're going to dive into what is interoception, how do we experience it, and how can we use the knowledge about what it is and how we experience it either as neurotypical or neurodiverse brains to help us with self-regulation? Where does mindfulness play in? It is a really interesting conversation. I think you're going to learn a lot. I know I did. So yeah, let's just go ahead and welcome Kelly to the show. You're going to want to check out the show notes for all the resources she has. This woman's a powerhouse. Okay, let's get into it. Kelly, welcome to the show. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Same. Thanks for having me, Jill. I can't wait to have this conversation.
Me too. It is a new idea for me, this interoception, and I can't believe that I haven't heard of it before, which is kind of your experience when you first found the research as well, right? I'd love for you to give us like that backstory of what it was like when like the aha moment for this as like a center of research and work in your world.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been like super passionate as an occupational therapist, like supporting like mental health and emotion regulation with my clients. And looking back, I don't know if I realized at the time, but I like my clients would make progress, but I always like thought something was missing, but I never really thought a lot about it until I read a paper by this brilliant neuroscientist named Dr. Bud Craig, and he was talking about this new sense called interoception. And so I read this little paper that he had, and it was quite technical, actually. So I was a little scared, if I'm going to be honest, with this like very rich science. But like I really heard what he was saying. He's like saying like this is our sense of how our body feels, like what is the condition of our body. And so I became very curious, like, is this a big deal for my clients? And such a curious person. Like my husband calls me the interviewer. So I like went right to my clients, right to their families. I started asking lots of questions related to interoception. And it became so obvious that interoception was like a really, really big deal in their lives. They were really disconnected from their bodies, like really like having a hard time trusting what their bodies were telling them, understanding what their body was telling them that they needed. And so that really just kind of hooked me in. Kind of the rest is history, like 14 years later, I'm like an interoception groupie for sure. And like honestly, it has completely changed my own life too, like my own professional interoception journey, realizing that I was really ignoring a lot of what my body was telling me for a lot of reasons. And so it has really touched my life personally and also as a mom, just have to say, because I know we have a lot of moms listening out there.
Yeah, it's a big deal when you get this little piece. It's like the key almost, right? Because in my journey with navigating the autism diagnosis of my 7-year-old, I had heard of proprioception. That was a big one. He's sensory seeking, so that was like that was introduced to me very early. But this idea of interoception hadn't factored in anywhere. And I wonder if you could give us like a quick, just for those of those listeners who are listening and they're like, I think I know, but like I don't really know. Could you give us what is interoception and how we experience it?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Interoception is the sense within all of our bodies that helps us to know how our body is feeling. So it allows us to experience many different internal sensations, and this is going to be different for every single person listening, like how your body feels. But it might be like noticing like the feeling of like a pounding heart or sore muscles or a headache or maybe an empty stomach or a full bladder. Like there's so many different sensations our body can have, and interoception is why we experience all of those sensations. And those sensations are really showing up in research as very important parts of or clues, I should say, to what our body needs. So if we are like really attuned to our bodies, we're really noticing the signals that we're having, and we start to be able to understand those signals, it gives us this like kind of like um, this like understanding of how to care for our body. And so that can be a really hard journey because we are bombarded by a society that is pretty much anti-body listening, right? It's like go, 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 busy, 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 screen, 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 screen. So our attention is constantly pulled outside of our body. And then if you add neurodivergence to the mix, you're then living in a world that's also not set up to really honor your neurotype. So you're bombarded by a lot of messages quite frequently that your inner experience is wrong or your inner experience might be dismissed or misunderstood by other people. So it adds just other layer um, for neurodivergent people where, they might not understand their body or they might not trust their body signals.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I totally get that. I think that the idea of it being like that, them bombarded with all of this, and the idea that they're being told externally that they're not understood or that it's the experience is wrong or something. Like my son, um, he does not experience pain in the way that that I do or that most people I know do. Like pain is not something that he registers as a feeling in his body unless it is beyond, the normal threshold of what we would consider
Mhm.
um, acceptable. But then there's also, so for me, that might be understanding whether or not he has consciously done that because he doesn't know how to express it, or if it's something that's like physically. But the other interesting thing is me not understanding all the time, him trying to express now that he has words, right? Like what is the feelings that are happening in his body? Because sometimes he'll be like, oh, can you stop yelling? It hurts my throat. I'm like, well, you're not doing anything, bud. Like, how interesting that he has
Mhm.
a sensation in his throat because of an experience externally. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like, or could you turn the volume down? It hurts my stomach or what. I'm like, so crazy and cool. And I want to understand.
That is so cool. Oh my goodness. The insights he's offering you into his interceptive world is just absolutely phenomenal. And I love like that really is the heart of our work is just being curious, just like you are, like, and it could have been easy because that's not your experience. It could have been easy to say, oh, there's no way that you're feeling that in your throat. Are you sure? Like it probably is somewhere else, like your ears, but instead, you're meeting that with validation and curiosity. And that's just like what I love about this work so much is because we are understanding now that how different each of our bodies are and that can show up in your throat or your stomach or somewhere completely elsewhere. So we can't possibly teach people like this is the way pain should feel or this is the way anxiety should feel in your body. Like it's about how do we help you explore your own body and learn about your own unique interoceptive experience.
Yeah, absolutely. That feeling of curiosity, kind of like the thread that ties it all together, right?
Yeah.
And for anyone listening who either doesn't have a neurodiverse child or isn't neurodiverse themselves, this is still something that is important to know, right? Like this is not just a something for other people. We can use this information to help us with our own self-regulation, which is something that I'm really working on for my own self right now. And so to have this tool is just another tool in the toolbox for me. Can you talk a little bit about how we can link this knowledge with our journey to help get control of our emotions and regulate ourselves when we're sort of triggered?
Yeah, like I said, we live in this society that is constantly sending us messages to ignore our body. No pain, no gain. You got to push through. You got to work yourself till you have a chronic health condition, right? Like that's just kind of like our society. So it's like overriding what our body is telling us. And so finding moments to really um, take time to notice your body signals, which I know is really hard, especially, as moms, like we're very, very busy, right? So how do you find those moments to like, intentionally just kind of take 30 seconds, maybe while you're driving in the car or like, while you're in the shower, like when you have this like quick moment to just like tune in and notice how like a certain body part is feeling, just kind of like get that almost like that noticing muscle like active because that noticing, that body noticing is overridden many times by just the lives we live. And so just practicing that noticing is really like the start of self-regulation. Like it really can enhance because we have to like be able to notice and understand our body in order to self-regulate. Like, right, you have to know how you feel in order to know what to do about it, like, simply
Yeah.
said. And that interoception piece it starts with like body noticing. That's like kind of the foundation.
That makes sense because if we can work this muscle and sort of carve out a couple times a day or once a day or however often you're able to get it to work it in, right? I talk a lot about this concept of time confetti, where we have these like 5 or 10 minute pockets throughout the day that we don't take advantage of. This could be a really good thing, guys, to put on your time confetti list. Like do a body scan and just see what's feeling what where, right? And make a note because the more that you practice paying attention, the more that in a moment of dysregulation, you'll be able to name it quicker because you're used to it.
That's right. Yeah, waiting until you're in a state of dysregulation or distress is not ideally the time to start noticing your body because your body probably doesn't feel like a great place to like notice, when it's uncomfortable and in this heightened state. So I love that you pointed that out and I love the concept of time confetti. That's really brilliant. But like, finding those windows of time when you're a little bit more regulated, when your body feels safe enough to like notice and like really practicing in those moments can be really helpful then for when you become dysregulated.
Yeah. And it ties in a lot, I mean, to me, as we're talking about this with mindfulness and just like being present and noticing, do you ever recommend or work with your clients on this idea of mindfulness and bringing that in and doing that connection?
Yeah, a lot of the published studies out there are showing that interoception can be enhanced. Most of the studies use some form of body mindfulness. So, like, purposefully paying attention to your body in the present moment. And so, mindfulness we know is like really helpful for a lot of things. It is like if any listener is like, well, I've tried mindfulness, it's not for me. Like, you are not alone. Like, it was not a match for me. I am neurodivergent. It doesn't mean that neurodivergent people cannot access mindfulness, but where I was at in that moment of time, it was just really inaccessible to me. And the same is so true for a lot of my clients. And so what we have done is we tried to like do little modifications to like more westernized mindfulness. So like we'll just like focus on one body part at a time. So and we start with like outside body parts first, like body parts we can observe while we're learning to notice them, so like how do my hands feel or what are the different ways my feet can feel or my mouth can feel, and then we slowly work our way to inside body parts. So really kind of chunking this work so it's not like such a huge cognitive like overload. Like if in the beginning, like I can do a body scan now, but in the beginning, if you played a body scan and you're like, try this for 5 minutes, like my attention was like, all over the place. I really had to like break this down and modify it in order to be able to build up to the concept of how does my entire body feel right now. And that has been like really helpful for a lot of my clients too. And the other thing, like we've modified it in so many ways. So I just wanted to share like breaking into one body part at a time. So like maybe like this week, you're just taking time to notice how your hands feel, like during a moment in time with your time confetti. And then maybe next week you do your feet, and then you can slowly work through. The other thing that we have found to be very helpful is to notice how your body feels while you are evoking a stronger sensation in your body. So what I mean by that is like, so if you want to like practice like, noticing how your hands feel. Like find things that might be happening during your day that might be evoking stronger sensation. Like maybe like every time when you're washing your hands, just take a minute to notice how your hands feel. Or every time, I don't know, you're tying your shoes or whatever it is, like something you're doing with your hands that might be evoking a stronger sensation, because that helps with the attention piece many times, like capturing attention. And that has been really, really helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, that makes good sense. I'm gonna start to practice this too and get a sense because I'm very much in my head and not in my body throughout the day as much as I try and I know I should, and
Yeah.
so having this tool to sort of just check in really intentionally with one body part and make a
Mhm.
habit of it can be really good. I'm curious to know how we can two things. So you choose where we go first, but I'm curious to know how we can communicate our experience to other people to perhaps explain a situation or a feeling or an anxiety, something like that. And how we can use this information to encourage our kids to verbalize and explain, especially if they're neurodiverse, but just any kid. Like, how do we encourage other people, and how do we do it?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these are really good questions. They go hand in hand. And what we are learning from so many people, including adults, that many of us have very limited interoception vocabulary because we don't really make a habit. I'm overgeneralizing here, but most people don't really make it a habit of, narrating how their body feels on a daily basis. So we're not really exposed to a lot of like interoception sensation words, right? And so that language piece like is such a big deal for so many people, like whether they're neurodivergent or not. Like this is inclusive of society in general. So how do you support that? Like that's a really great question. Like we have a lot of like menus in my work, like descriptor word menus we call them, and they're like menus of different possibilities or words you can use to describe the way your hands can feel or the way your heart can feel. And if you don't have access to that, like if you're someone that like likes chat gpt, you can go on there and give chat gpt a prompt and say like give me a list of words that can be used to describe the way my hands can feel. Or if you want to like nurture maybe your toddler or your preschooler or your high schooler's interoception vocabulary, you can make your prompt very specific, like give me a list of words that high schoolers would use to describe the way their hands can feel. And if you're not a big AI fan, that's okay. Like I used to do this on Google too. It's just not quite as complete. But to like really nurture that language can be really tricky at first. And how do we like turn that and help our kids to develop interoception vocabulary? One thing that I am really working hard on doing with my own kids, and I know there's lots of parents out there now that are trying this, is like starting to narrate out loud a little bit more about our inner feels. And I wish I would have known this when my kids were really little because I didn't know about interoception, but like I would have been narrating like potty like feelings, like, oh, like I have this funny feeling down below my belly button. Like I think I have to pee. I'm gonna go test this out. Let me see, like I'm gonna go to the toilet and then come out and be like, oh my gosh, that feeling's gone away. It meant I had to pee. Like I wasn't talking anything about the way my body felt, in any daily activity. So I feel like that's something I'm trying to do better. Although I have teenagers now and they're kind of like, Mom, you're so embarrassing.
Oh yeah,
But
I get that one.
yeah.
I actually got that one from my 5-year-old that I embarrassed her by
Oh.
sending her a post-it note in her lunch that said, I love you. I'm like, do you even know what embarrassed is? But anyways, that's another.
Oh, yeah. It can start young, but I think whenever we can just model the fact that we have this internal process, even if you're working through like something like I noticed something in my body, but I'm not sure what it is. I think even modeling the fact that you are having a hard time figuring that out is so helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then also like you're getting that interception vocabulary out there and
Mhm.
exposing your kid to it. So I think, there's a lot of benefit to us narrating out loud about the way our
Yeah,
body feels.
absolutely. And it's a tool that I learned as I was working with an SLP trying to get my son to learn language, right? Is narrating. And so like there's way more chatter in our lives now than I would like because we're all constantly narrating. We just fell into it and it hasn't gone away. But bringing this element of like how our body is feeling can be super helpful, especially in moments where I can sense like a meltdown or a conflict coming, or if we're perhaps talking about how somebody else might be feeling, to work on that empathetic kind of muscle too, right? Like, oh, I see that their face is getting red. Like, I wonder if blah, blah, blah. That could be a cool way to use it as well.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. Like this just naturally breeds empathy. Like when you're modeling or sharing how your body feels, and then you're like, I wonder if it's like same or different for you. And most likely it's going to be different for your child. And then you can like start to like really concretely see just how different each of your bodies feel in the world. And like we just start to like naturally gain this perspective of like, oh, like, each person's body feels different. Which is obviously the foundation of empathy and knowing that other people feel differently than us.
Hmm. This is so great. I love this so much. I would love if you would share with us some of the resources that you have, because I know if people are still listening, they're like, "Where's the rabbit hole? How can I go down it and learn more from Kelly?" And you have a ton available. So can you share about it?
Oh, we have lots of little rabbit holes for you. I would start on my website because we have a lot of really like really great free stuff there. So we have like blog posts. Also, like my YouTube channel is probably another good rabbit hole for you if you're looking for one. Lots of free videos there that go on many different topics. The relationship between interoception and mental health, or the impact that compliance approaches have on interoception. We have so many different topics and little avenues to explore. And then we also have lots of paid resources too. Our most popular is the interoception curriculum. And that's like really a framework for like nurturing this interoception in all of our bodies.
Yeah, I love it. I'm going to make sure the link for your website and some of these other freebies and some of the popular things are linked in the show notes as well. So it's super easy for those who are listening just to like swipe up and click it and go, because oftentimes what will happen, at least to me, is I'll hear something on a podcast. I'm listening, I'm in the middle of something else, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want to remember that. And then I kind of forget unless it's really easy. So we're going to make it easy because I don't want you guys to forget to go check this out. It's such a valuable resource. It is such um, an interesting, it's not even a framework. It's just it's a concept that we don't know about yet, that we're not familiar with. And I think it will really help a lot of people in their parenting journey and their personal journey just to have this knowledge. So thank you for coming on and talking, Kelly, with us. It's been so cool.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah. Before we go, is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with, or any piece that we haven't touched on that feels just important to share?
No, I really think we captured it in a nice little nutshell. I just want to like say like your inner experience is always correct and valid. And I think that beginning to be able to know like the way your body experiences the world is correct and valid for you, even if it doesn't fit into like what you have been told the way your body should feel. I think that's really, it's a hard message to like really come around to, but I hope that all of your listeners, if they don't already know that about themselves, I hope that someday they do believe that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank
Hmm.
you. And for everyone who's still here with us, until next week, keep on growing like a mother.